So, hey there, what's up? And here we go. I'm on DjangoProject.com. This, of course, is your best source for all things Django. I would love to say it's my website. I would love to say it's somebody else's website, but at the end of the day, DjangoProject.com is your best source. The documentation is fantastic. The tutorial on here is also fantastic. So there is a tutorial in the documentation. So by all means, if you have some Python familiarity and after you watch this one, you can absolutely jump into that tutorial and get a lot out of it. Definitely a lot out of it. Trust me. Because if you do that tutorial and you're really getting stuck in all those things, that's what my live streams are going to really help clarify a bunch of things that are going on in that tutorial. So in order to actually get Django going, we need to have Python installed. So if you don't have Python installed, I sort of assume that you do. I have a couple blog posts that show you how to do it on Windows or Mac. It actually doesn't matter what system that you're using. I'm going to be covering generally the same commands for both machines. So yeah, you can absolutely use Windows, Mac, or Linux. Linux users typically know how to install things on the command line a little bit easier than Mac and Windows users in my experience. So if you're on Linux, you can use this Mac one as well. I'm going to be using the text editor Visual Studio Code, or VS Code for short. This is actually where we're going to write a lot of our code. Now, what I'll be showing you is in a moment is actually how to create our Django project. And we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in that project in general. And we're going to be using VS Code, so we'll also set up VS Code for that. Now, this is a text editor, so it's really just writing our Python code, our HTML code, and all the things that are related to our project. So you don't have to use VS Code. You can use something like Sublime Text, which was my longtime favorite, but VS Code has surpassed that now. I think there's a lot more features to VS Code that are really nice. PyCharm or PyCharm is another one that a lot of people seem to like. And there's many other text editors out there. You shouldn't get held up too much or caught up too much on which text editors do you want to use. Just pick one and go for it. Now, if you want to stick with me, just download VS Code. The Sublime Text and VS Code are free. PyCharm is not, unfortunately. So just pick one, download it, and get it going. Okay, so now what I want to do is actually show you how to start a Django project. This is actually really straightforward and simple to do, but we're going to talk about a couple of things that are important when you are building one of these projects. So first and foremost, you need to open up your command line. In this case, I'm using the terminal program on Mac. If you're on Windows, you're going to want to use PowerShell. So either one works just fine. And if you installed Python on Windows, you can probably just do Python-V, and you'll probably see Python 3.6, 3.7, or 3.8, one of those versions showing up here. Now, Mac users, as of now, Python 2.7 is the default Python version. So if you went through the tutorial, you'll know that you have to type out Python 3 to actually get the version that you want to use. Okay, so really simple, not that big of a deal, but once we go into Python 3, we can actually start to write Python code in here, like 1 + 1, right? So if I already lost you, then you definitely want to go through that 30 days of Python, maybe the entire thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and exit out of this, and I'm going to clear out my screen here. So now what I want to do is actually create the first Django project. Now creating this is actually not that hard to do, but if you haven't worked in the terminal, if you haven't worked in the command line very much, then you're going to want to start to get comfortable with this, because all we're going to really be doing is typing out commands. You don't really use your mouse that much on the command line itself. So just keep that in mind. But what VS Code will do is it'll make it a lot easier to switch between the files we want to work on than using something like the command line, right? That's just generally how a lot of developers do. And there's some other features that are really cool too, and I'll show you those. So let's go ahead and list things out with ls. Now, it doesn't matter what system you're on, terminal and PowerShell, ls should work. If for some reason your Windows is not working, just use dir, and you'll be able to list out everything that you are. dir also is in lieu of using pwd. So dir, Windows users, you get both the path as to where you are currently located and all of this really cool other stuff. So now we're going to want to make a directory called dev. Now in my case, I already have a directory called dev. So mkdir is actually how you make a directory, and then you give some arbitrary name here. I create a dev folder for all of my projects. I always store them in there. So let's go ahead and cd into that dev folder. And again, we'll list everything out. Now, if you just created this folder, you won't have all of this stuff, right? I have all this stuff because I create all sorts of projects on this particular user account. So I'll go ahead and clear this out. And now I'm going to go ahead and make dir, and we'll call this DJ Bootcamp, as in Django-Bootcamp. Okay, and then we're going to cd into that DJ Bootcamp. And now this is something that's absolutely critical. We want to create something called a virtual environment. If you're not aware, virtual environments help Python projects stay nice and isolated. I'll give you an example of this. If you had a different version of Django on your system, much like I probably do by running pip freeze, I'll actually see this different version of Django, right? So I have a bunch of things already installed in here, and actually I don't even have Django on there, but I do have Flasks. So you see that Flasks on there. A virtual environment will isolate my project from what's on my system, but it will also isolate it from other projects. Now this, of course, does not mean that it's perfectly isolated, but it will at least treat it as isolated as possible. So I'm going to clear this out, and again, I'm inside of my project here, and I have nothing installed yet. So there's a lot of different ways on how you can create a virtual environment. So what I'm going to do is actually using Python 3-m, venv, and period. Now, a lot of you are like, wait, if you've seen me do other stuff, I use pip env all the time. The reason I'm using this is because everyone will for sure have this already ready installed if you have Python 3 in there. So now, of course, remember back, Windows users, you probably won't have to put the number 3 there. You'll probably just type out Python -m, venv, and period. So this -m is a module, or the actual Python module that is built into Python. That's what it's calling. And venv is the virtual environment manager. And then this last period here actually puts it in this directory right here. If you gave it another name, it would create a new directory and put it in that directory. There's a lot of different ways on how people approach doing this. I'm just going to do it like this, and I'll press enter. And this is going to create all of the things related to this virtual environment to make it as isolated as possible. So if I list it out, I see bin include lib and my configuration file for this virtual environment. Now, if you're on actual Windows, you're going to see a little bit different of files here, but generally the same. So Mac and Linux users, to activate this virtual environment, you just do source bin/activate, you hit enter, and there you go, right? So you now have a activated virtual environment. And if I run pip freeze now, it doesn't show anything. So this is a clear thing about it. Windows users, sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out. You'll just do scripts-activate just like that. That's how you activate your virtual environment on Windows. Okay. So the pip freeze shows me that I don't have any modules installed or any packages installed inside of this virtual environment. So another way to do this is running Python 3-m pip freeze. But now that I actually have a virtual environment, I actually shouldn't be calling Python 3-m like that, because that actually calls my system-wide one. Instead, what I should do is call Python-m pip freeze. And this is my virtual environment version of Python now. If you remember back earlier, what I did with Python-v, I actually had Python 2 in there because that was my system Mac version of Python. Now we can all just type out Python and go forward. Python, huh? Okay, cool. So if I haven't lost you yet, now what we can do is actually create our Django project. So Django-admin is the actual command that we want to run. If I hit enter, I don't have this command yet, right? So I actually need to install Django. This is really easy to do. There's several different ways on how to do it, but it's really easy. We use something like pip install and Django, the actual package we want to use. So this is also very clearly on the Django Web Frameworks documentation. So if we go into download here, and you'll see this all the time, right? You'll see this on all kinds of Python projects if you haven't already. But what we see right here is pip install Django 3.1.1, right? So that's actually how we're going to install Django, so we can use that command. Now, if you just want to use the latest version of Django, running pip install Django will certainly do that. So pip install Django, of course, this downloads and installs our Django project, or rather Django module or package itself. And then we actually need to create our Django project with this Django-admin. Now, I will say it used to be Django-admin.py. It's no longer that. So if you see an older tutorial using .py, just remember that you don't need that anymore unless you have an older version of Django, which to me, Django is Django. It has evolved over the years, but if you're a beginner, and especially if you're here in this bootcamp, just remember that older versions of Django aren't a whole lot different than what we've got today. There certainly are differences, but you can still learn a lot from those older ones. So what we do here is we want to call this Django admin command. So I'll go ahead and do clear, and we'll just do Django-admin and hit enter. So now I get all of this stuff, right? So I have all sorts of built-in commands to Django. This is one of the primary reasons to use Django. Django has a lot of built-in features that make it really easy and really fast to build highly functional applications. This is a good example of that. It already has all of these commands built in. So a good one that is kind of cool to see right off the bat is send test email. Also shell, right? So you're familiar with the Python shell. That's the Django shell, or the Django managed shell. So the ones we're going to be using right now are start project and start app. So let's go ahead and start our project. I'll do Django-admin start project, and I'm going to call this DJ_bootcamp. Now Python itself, let me actually just clear this out real quick. Make sure everyone can see this. So Django-admin start project DJ bootcamp. Now Python itself, you do not want to use dashes inside of Python. Instead, you want to use snake case like this, where there's an underscore in between the module names. So I'm going to start this project, and I'm going to put a period at the end. If you don't put that period at the end, it's going to create a new folder with that project information. I hit enter, I list everything out, and what do you know? I have manage.py in here, as well as a folder called DJ Bootcamp. So this is where my virtual environment related items are in here as well, right? So some tutorials, sometimes you'll see them separated out in different ways. All of that's totally okay. I just wanted to make sure that you understand that the main things related to Django are manage.py and the project name that you just declared. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to actually put this into VS Code. So when Mac users, you can do this. Windows users just do II period, and that will actually open up the folder that this project is in. Now, I'm also going to open up VS Code. Okay, so here is a standard version of VS Code. You might have the start window on here, this welcome window. And if you do, that's completely okay. Something like that. But basically what I want to do is I want to add this project in here. So I'll go ahead and open this folder up, navigate back to that folder of DJ Bootcamp, and go ahead and hit open. And there we go. So I've got manage.py here. This is a command that we will call a lot. And then I also have, so this Python extension popped up. This is actually a good time to talk about it. VS Code has a bunch of extensions that you can install. Just look for this little icon right here for extensions. Go in there, look for the Python extension, and go ahead and install it. That is something I believe I do in 30 Days of Python, but even if I don't, that's how you do it right there. Okay, cool. So manage.py, we don't actually really ever have to change this, but we will call it fairly often. And then we've got our Django configuration here. So the init file, of course, turns this into a Python module. The DJ Bootcamp into a Python module. ASGI, this is for asynchronous Django, something we are not going to be covering in this series because it starts to get to advanced territory that's just really outside the context of the things that we should be covering here. Next up is settings.py. So settings.py has made a little bit of changes from previous versions. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Next is URLs. URLs is how we actually route every URL path to Django. We definitely have to talk about this a lot when we get into the views portion of things, So that's going to be coming next week in more detail. WSGI, this is the web server gateway interface. This is the synchronous version of it, the synchronous version of the asynchronous server gateway interface. So WSGI is where we're going to be using a lot of our project as well. So let's actually create and run our project. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up terminal inside of VS Code. To do this, it's Control tilde. So tilde, if you're not familiar, is this right here. And we are going to use Control and tilde to open up this terminal. In my case, it's identical to this terminal right here. One of the reasons you'd use the VS Code one is so you don't actually have to leave VS Code while you're running things. And by default, it's going to open up where your project actually lives. And to save this project, we also want to just do that real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and save workspace as inside of where manage.py is, and we'll call this DJ Bootcamp.code workspace. Okay, so we'll save that. And now inside of this terminal again, we're going to pwd. We're exactly where we need to be. Again, Windows users, you'll use dir. And again, we'll use python -m venv period. Well, actually, we don't need to do that, right? Because we already have the virtual environment in there. So this is a common thing that gets mistaken sometimes as you try to reactivate or reinstall the virtual environment. But after you install it one time, it's ready to be reused. So we'll go ahead and do /activate. And now we're activated in VS Code. So I'm going to clear this all out. And I'm going to run the first command that we need to use. And this is python manage.py. If I hit enter here, you will actually see the exact same commands that we saw with Django-admin, right? So Django-admin also does this, right? So commands are identical, except Django manage.py actually deals with our specific a bit. So now what I want to do is actually go back into VS Code, and I'm going to bring down my terminal a little bit. I'm actually going to open up another terminal here. So I'm going to split it open. And here is that other terminal. I am in the exact same project. Another reason to actually use VS Code is this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up a little bit more by closing down the Explorer there. I'm going to go ahead and activate my virtual environment with source bin /activate. Of course, if you're on Windows, you'd use ./scripts to activate. And now we're going to go ahead and create our first super user. So python manage.py, and we're going to go ahead and say create super user. Make sure it's all in one command. That's actually how you do it. You hit enter, and we get no such table auth user. Right? So you'll also see this quite a bit because the actual tables themselves have not been created yet in the database. So what that means is for Django specifically, now you can create the database tables yourself. Like you can go and do all those things manually, or we can use Django to manage it for us. And that's one of the biggest reasons to use Django is so that Django manages all of these things for us. So it's simple. We just run python manage.py and migrate. Let me actually clear that up. So python manage.py will migrate our database table, right? It will migrate our backend all the time. So no matter what, this actually runs the migrations, if migrations need to happen. We'll talk about that too next week in a lot more detail. But once I actually run this, notice that it's saying applying all this stuff. So what Django's doing here is it's telling our database, make these tables, make sure they exist so that Django can actually run on top of it. So now that we've got that, I'm going to go ahead and clear it out again. Now I'll go ahead and run python manage.py create super user. We hit enter, and now you can declare your username. I'm just going to use CFE. You can add an email address if you want. When you go into production, this is a little bit more important, but it's not even that important for production. The password you want to use, just use a whatever password. It actually does not matter what password you use in development, and I'll show you that in just a moment too. So I'm going to use a simple whatever password, and see I still have my server running here, right? So with that server running, I can actually go back into the server, back into the admin URL itself, and I can log in with my user, right? So in my browser, I pretty much always use the same local username and user password. So that's why my browser has it stored. By all means, do that as well. But of course, you don't want to do this on production ready code and production databases, especially not. And of course, when I say production, I mean ready for real people to actually use this. This right here, real people cannot use, as you probably already know, and it's probably an intuitive sense. But if you go to this URL when your server's not running, it's going to show nothing, right? Okay, so this is a Django Admin. Really, really basic as default. But one of the really nice things about Django right out of the gates, well, of course, is the Django Admin, but also is actually managing users. Right here, we can manage all of the users for our entire project. That I think is really, really cool. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you before we start taking questions is getting back to practically zero. In other words, I'm going to delete this entire project, and we're going to do this all over again, but I'm not going to give as much context. So by all means, go ahead and do the same thing or just watch, because it's just going to really just wrap up this entire thing. In fact, let's go ahead and do it all from scratch. So I'm going to remove the Django Bootcamp itself. So dj-bootcamp. Okay, so it removes that folder, it removes everything. So this is going to just show you exactly it is what we're trying to do here. So again, we're going to make a directory. So make dir, and this is going to be dj-bootcamp. Remember, we used that dash. We'll cd into there. We will run python 3-m venv period. That's going to create that virtual environment for us. Okay, now that that's there, we'll activate the virtual environment, and then we'll do pip install Django. And in my case, I'm using 3.1.1, but either way, it doesn't fully matter for this example. You can use old versions of Django as well and get exactly what it is that we're doing here. Not much has changed in the way of actually setting up a Django project. Now I'll use Django admin start project, and we will call this the DJ Bootcamp. Okay, and now that we've got that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up again. And I'm going to add this into my VS Code folder here. It's the same folder that it was, so it's no big deal there. And I'm going to go ahead and file. Oops, I hit it twice. There we go. So file and save workspace as. Yet again, DJ_bootcamp or DJ-bootcamp. That file doesn't actually matter that much. It says it already exists, even though I should have already deleted it. I'm just going to go ahead and replace the one I had there. Okay, so now I've got that project. I'll go ahead and run Python manage.py migrate. Oops, I actually did not do the project correctly. Notice that I did not have that period there. That good error to happen. So I'm going to delete that project itself and then run the command again with that period at the end, like I said you should do. Now when I list this out, I can actually run it. Now the reason I knew that happened is because it's saying it can't open manage.py. So I see the DJ Bootcamp's in there, but manage.py is not. So that's how I was really easily able to identify the fact that I didn't do that period. This comes with experience, I promise you. So now we'll go ahead and do Python manage.py and migrate. And then Python manage.py create super user. And again, the same information that I used before. And finally, we'll go ahead and run that server again. And the actual session ended, right? Because I deleted the database, that's one thing, but I actually recreated the project altogether. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in that whatever password. And now I'm back in. I'm right back to where I started. So I want you to get familiar, or at least comfortable with the idea that you can just eradicate your entire project and start over. Especially if you're like getting code jumbled or something like that, it's often a really good idea to just go and start a brand new project. And I just wanted to really highlight how all of that's done. Another way to actually kind of get going from scratch is to rename db.sqlite3 or just delete that file, run migrations, and then you're off to it. Okay, so that is how we set up a Django project, how we create a admin user, how we run our first migrations. Now what I want to briefly talk about is this settings file. So first and foremost, if you aren't familiar with pathlib, it's a really good thing to learn. Django now uses pathlib. It used to use OS, but pathlib is incredibly easy to follow, I think. So let me just declare what this base directory is. Well, the base directory is where manage.py lives. It pretty much always is that if you're using the Django commands that I did. If you're not using some other commands that actually build a Django project, which you totally could. But in my case, the base dir is where manage.py lives by default. And this actually shows us that. So path of file, so it's giving us the absolute path of settings.py. That's what this resolving does. The parent path for settings.py, as in the parent module, is the name of our project. It's where DJ Bootcamp is. It's the folder that settings.py lives in. And then the parent of that, the top level parent, is that project that we created for our virtual environment. So DJ-Bootcamp. That's the base directory. Secret key. Now, it says to keep it secret in production. Absolutely, you want to keep it secret in production. When you're testing things out, it doesn't matter. That's also true with debug. You want to keep it true so you get some errors while you're going through this. Next, allowed host. This is something we'll cover later, but it's generally what's the domain that you want to allow for, or the host URL that you want allowed for. Installed apps. This is something that we'll talk about a lot as well. These are how we extend and really use Django. So we already saw the admin. We already saw auth. We actually already saw a little bit about sessions as well, because when I deleted the backend, my admin session ended. So logging in, logging out actually applies to sessions as well as auth. Middleware. So middleware is a bunch of built-in security features to Django. Well, other features as well, but a lot of security features to Django that happens in between going to a page and that page responding to you. So that's a request and response. We'll talk about the details of that too. Root URL configuration. This, of course, is what we already saw. This urls.py file. This is just a declaration for where that lives and how we're going to map all of our URLs and paths. I realize that all of this stuff should be incredibly confusing if you've never used Django before, and I'm really glossing over it because we're going to get into it in detail later. That's what the bootcamp's all about, right? Templates. This is a fundamental structure to using Django's MVT. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this, we're going to be talking about templates a lot. And templates have their own built-in processors and ways to do programming inside of the template itself, which is really cool, and it makes another great aspect for Django. The WSGI, so the Web Server Gateway Interface application, as we mentioned, is that WSGI file, and specifically the declaration of application. And then another one that you will be really interested in knowing about is the database configuration. This is the default configuration for Django. It says basedir/db.sqlite3. So notice that SQLite3 is in the same place as manage.py. That is showing us where that base directory is as well. And this database, if we change it here, Django will make a new one for us as long as we run migrate on there. SQLite3 is a really fast and easy way to prototype a lot of databases, although you wouldn't necessarily use it in production. We've got password validators. This is password validation to make sure your passwords are pretty good. Now, that doesn't always work unless you actually implement it. Here's some internationalization things. So if you're in a different part of the world, you can change this, and the documentation shows you how to do that. And then finally, static files. This is actually how we run images, CSS, and JavaScript. That is something we'll talk about as well throughout this entire bootcamp. Okay, so that's it for the baseline setup of a Django project. So what I'm going to be doing now is actually taking questions, and I think I'm a little far behind on the questions, right? So we've been talking for almost 40 minutes now, so I'm definitely behind on the questions. So what I want to do is go back into like a typical live stream for the Q&A related to this. Now, this was meant to give you a preview of what's to come. This one probably went a lot faster than I will on other areas, especially the first few days as I'm filling out how you guys are really getting this. I think this might have been review for a lot of you anyway, especially if you've seen some other of my series. But the speed as to which it's going is important for, well, for my sanity, honestly. If I go any slower than this, it's going to be a slog for me. And then I think you guys will start to feel that. The other thing is you can always rewatch these live streams. That's another reason why I'm making them completely on YouTube, is because if I was going to do this specific thing for 14 hours straight, 7 hours one day, 7 hours another day, I just don't know if I would be able to maintain any real level of energy to do that and answer a bunch of questions. So yeah, that's a little note on the speed itself. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is start taking your questions. Let me just queue this up real fast. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Really appreciate it. I'm really excited about this because, yeah, I have a lot of videos covering this, but the part that I don't have is answering individual questions in those videos in a live setting. And that I think is really cool about going live, and the fact that I can talk to you guys around the world. I also realize, you know, this is probably not the best time per se for all of the live for everybody, you know what I mean? But yeah, thanks for coming out anyway. Okay, cool. So I'm going to jump back into my questions here, just like this. Hello, everyone. And let's see here. Sorry about that question. That's an old one. Let's put one on. We got a super chat. Hey, thanks so much. I'm glad that you watched many of the tutorials. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. So here we go. I have some old questions. This is a good question. The link for the Discord, that's going to come much later once we actually get into the more individualized help, right? So those 2 days, it's all about the individualization. I'll have private Discord for those 20 people and myself to really figure out problems together, right? I want us all to be helping each other out in that. Thanks for the question. Next one, is this free? Yes, mostly free. The streaming part is free, but if you want my direct feedback on your project, it is not, unfortunately. Okay, cool. So let's see here. Getting a lot of questions here. I just got to clear out some of this really quick. We'll watch the video after it's uploaded. Cool. I have a lot of Django series on codingforentrepreneurs.com. Absolutely. This bootcamp is meant to answer your questions as soon as they're happening, ideally as much as possible. So feel free to ask questions related to this now. It looks like I've been freezing or buffering a little bit. Sorry about that. I have nothing else on the internet, just this. So I'm not sure why it's buffering. Maybe it's something related to YouTube or the streaming software. I don't know. Okay. So do we have any questions now? I'm going to go ahead and try and load some up. Maybe the current part of the boot camp, maybe this comment thing is not actually that ideal right at this moment, because, you know, maybe some of the questions were answered. I hope that they were, but I'm happy to answer anything related to the boot camp, or if you want to get other things going, please let me know. Hey, how's it going? Welcome. Let's see here. I'm going to jump into the live stream. Cool. So I do have some newer ones towards the end. I'm going to load those up now. Okay, so quick question. Will JavaScript play a main role in Django? JavaScript and Django work really well together, I think, but JavaScript and Django don't need each other to work well, pretty much. But I will cover a little bit about using JavaScript in this bootcamp, but not a whole lot, because this is much more about getting Django going and all that. Thanks for the question. Are all of the 20 people going to build the same project together? This is a good question. So what we will be doing is building the same project together during the streaming, and the actual 20 people, that private event, that one is going to be whatever you're having issue with or struggling with in relation to Django. So my goal is to have this streaming of 2 weeks to actually solve a lot of problems in relation to what you may be facing with your Django projects. But then the actual private one is going to be, bring your own project, and I'll do my best, as well as the rest of us will also try and help actually solve problems with all of those projects. So I will be pairing people up, or most likely will be pairing people up to have like a buddy or maybe a couple of buddies as partners, so that you guys can also give feedback directly on each other's projects. So realistically, I would love it if you brought your own project, but even if you didn't and we were all using the same Django Bootcamp project, that's totally okay. What project will be covered in this bootcamp? I did mention this towards the beginning, so maybe came a little late. The project, this also answers, this question too. We are going to be building a single page e-commerce application. So when I say single page, that means that we're not going to have a full built cart itself. That's going to be outside the context of 2 weeks. That'll just take, well, we just don't have enough time to do that really. So a actual e-commerce single page application will be, you'll be able to list a product, or you could do the same method for many products, but really it's just going to be a one-click purchase type action. That's it. So that's where the single page sort of thing works out. And I'm not actually sure what credit card processing will do yet, and even if we'll even get there, because some of it does cover and require to use credit cards itself. But I do intend to get to the credit card part at some point, even if it's not in the actual bootcamp itself. So that's Stripe, Braintree, something like that. So we'll have polls and stuff like that later as we go further on this one. Thanks for the questions, you guys. Let's see, Django REST Framework. I am not going to be covering Django REST Framework really in this bootcamp. Maybe if some things really require it. But this is meant to get from the very ground level, covering all of the things that I talked about a little bit earlier. So those things being, let me just pull it up again. Thanks for the questions. All right. So let me load in some more questions, you guys. Thank you so much. And if you actually ask the same question over and over, I am not going to be able to get to that one. You know what I mean? Oh, this is a good question. Let me find it here. How will I pick the 20 people? This is going to be a first come, first serve, right? So once we actually get through the first week, I'll give a lot more details related to those 20 people. So just make sure you subscribe on the channel to know exactly when the first few streams are going to be. More than likely, they'll be earlier than this right here. More than likely, they'll be at 10 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. I just needed to do it at 11 a.m. for this one in particular. And I say 10 a.m. as in 10 in the morning in California time. That is best suited for me, and hopefully it works for the vast majority of you as well. So yeah. Willy Wonka. I know, right? These like copy and paste questions is funny. No, we will not be using the Django REST framework because we're not really using a client. Maybe I have to do a lot of these boot camps, right? So depending on how this boot camp does, I'll just continuously do boot camps. I think this live thing, there's something to it, right? So whether it's these live Q&As like we're doing now, or if it's going to be actual live courses, these bootcamp type things where I'm live coding and then answering questions in this similar fashion. Yeah, maybe eventually we'll have to do just more and more Django stuff. But again, it's going to depend all on how this bootcamp does. So if you have friends that are just dabbling in Django and you want to give them like a little bit more information, have them come watch. Make sure they're subscribed so they know about it. But yeah, I do intend to do a lot more boot camps in the future, but we'll see. We'll see how this thing goes and how much we interact. Yeah. Good question. Hello, welcome. Basic Python knowledge enough. Yeah, so I mentioned this at the very beginning, but the idea, let me just pull up that slide. I'll say what I think your basic knowledge needs to be. And line foundation for what you should know. But, you know, I will be answering questions. So even if you are struggling a bit with the Python stuff and you show up, just let me know then, and I'll try and give you some advice as to how you can get up to speed with Python and just be a little bit behind on the live stream and just watch it later type of thing. You know what I mean? Thanks for the questions. Sounds like Stripe. Stripe is the go ahead. So I actually do have a poll for you guys. Let's see here. Let me just pull it up. Pull up the poll. All right. And the poll is not working. Hang on one second here. That you can answer that poll by all means. To answer the polls themselves, you just reply in the live chat with hashtag A, B, or C. This one is going to change in just a minute. It's just still working out the kinks on this, as many of you who come to my live streams, the live stream Q&A stuff, probably already know or are already well aware of. Okay, cool. So this is going to be the actual poll I want to know from you guys that intend to actually come out. So the reason I'm asking this is because it will give me a better sense as to where everybody is in general. So ideally, I think ideally speaking, you're like in the B column here. Like you have some familiarity. You're not completely a beginner because Django itself doesn't really tend that well for complete beginners. And this bootcamp is going to go just as fast as I did, roughly speaking. So absolute beginners will probably face a little bit more challenges than the rest of you. But, you know, it's all live streamed and it's all going to be saved. So be sure to, you know, come back and check it out whenever you need. All right. So I see I'm getting a lot of votes. Make sure you use the hashtag in front of it. And we will hopefully load this thing up in just a second. There we go. There's some of the votes. So yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, that's approximately what the distribution I was looking for. If you're in that A column, then if you're 0 to 3 months, then I would say just kind of let the bootcamp go. You can watch it. It's going to be about an hour each time, like this one. So you can totally watch it to see where the gaps in your knowledge are, and literally just write questions down to yourself. That's my best recommendation, and not try to actually code and keep up with me, because I think it will be a lot harder than otherwise. You know what I mean? I don't know, but it's up to you. I've just seen that as being a pretty effective way to do it. You know what I mean? Cool. Let's see. I got someone saying no sound. No sound, huh? Interesting. So the no sound being, I think that worked. I don't know. I got a couple of you saying no audio. Can you guys let me know if the audio is back? I feel like the votes and stuff like that are showing that the audio is back. But maybe not. Sorry about that if the audio cut out. Did not intend that. Why is there no setup guide at the beginning of the stream? I actually did talk about the setup guides themselves. Do you mean why didn't I actually go through and install my system? If that's what you mean, well, that's actually a lot. It's not a whole lot of fun to do that. Oh, wow. Total blunder. I see it. I see the audio problem. That is silly. Silly live stream mistake. Give me 1 second. Can you guys hear me? Wow. Okay, so that was silly, but you know what? We're going to go back. So, of course, this is the Django Bootcamp. Wow. This is why we test things out, ideally in a live situation, not in the actual live stream itself. Totally missed a bunch of audio at the beginning. So I'll just go through this again really fast for those of you who missed it, and I'll link it hopefully earlier. But anyway, so my name is Justin Mitchell, and I've been doing this since 2013 or so. It's been a lot of fun. What we're going to be building is a single-page e-commerce application. I think some of you probably got this from earlier. I totally should have checked if the audio was on with you before I actually even started talking. But, you know, single-page application, I just mentioned this in general. These are the things that we're going to be covering. Django 3.1, model views, templates. Oh, wow, that's simple. That is a simple, small little error, and it's so silly. Thank you for bearing with that. So I definitely talked about that for a little bit of time. So here's the schedule, right? Maybe you've pieced this together a little bit, but we've got 2 weeks of streaming Monday through Friday. 100% of it will be on YouTube for free. And then we'll have 2 days of direct feedback on your project. This is going to be limited to 20 people. And it will cost about $200 US. And it's going to be limited to first come, first serve. I'll give a lot more context to that. Wow, that was so incredibly silly. I am so sorry about that, guys. Please continue to vote if you have some votes in there. Yeah, cool. It's cool you could read the slides. Okay, great. But you saw my mouth moving and you're like, hey, that's silly. I'm glad I made slides, you know? The audio thing, because like I basically just didn't check to make sure before I went on the live stream for the actual slides themselves if the sound was in there. What a silly amateur mistake. First bootcamp problems, am I right? Okay, so let me answer some more questions. Yeah, I'll answer as many questions as possible with you guys right now. If you have any additional questions, by all means, feel free to shoot them at me, whether they're bootcamp related or not. That was just like the silliest thing. Here's a good question. So the timing of the live stream, I did mention this a little bit ago in the Q&A. The timing, I'm going to be actually covering this at around 10 a.m. California time. So I think that's the easiest way for me, because in the morning, I'm a lot more high energy than I will be in later in the day. Because I think the vast majority of my time in California, like I think around maybe even now, it's really late for some people on the other side of the world. So 10 a.m. just ends up working probably the best for all of us. And I will actually schedule those, the entire schedule, all that stuff will be on YouTube for those videos, at least before that actual live stream happens. So if I need to change one of the days or something like that, I'll let you know about that. Cool. Thanks for the question. Let's see here. Is it free? Yes, everything is going to be live streamed for free, all of it. The thing that won't be is the actual 20-person private session with the Discord and all that. That stuff is going to be private. It's going to be more of a one-on-one with me and as well as the rest of the cohort. This is for those of you who are struggling, that are really ready to invest alongside of me to actually make your project happen, whatever that project ends up being. You let me know on Twitter that there was no audio. Thank you. I'm assuming that's what you meant. Thank you. I forgot my hat. Yeah, my hats are. I wear hats all the time, so they actually get a little dirty. And then this one broke, right? So I need to get a new hat. And as you see, it's a little dirty because I literally wear it all day. So yeah, I totally forgot it. Cool. So it looks like the vast majority of you have quite a bit of experience with this, and that's going to be really good. It's going to be a lot easier for you if you do have quite a bit of experience. And I'm assuming that a lot of you are going to end up showing up. Maybe not. We'll see. Either way, I'm really excited about doing this. Can I make a tutorial on how to build a custom Django admin page? Maybe eventually. Thanks for the suggestion. That's not going to be on the bootcamp, though. Why Django and not Laravel? Well, there's a lot of reasons I'm not going to get into, but this is a Django bootcamp. Well, why not Ruby on Rails? You know, like it's kind of a silly question. Maybe I shouldn't put this. Can I do a streaming app in the future? Like make a streaming application? That's a good question. Thank you for that, and good suggestion. Okay, so now we're moving into the territory of questions that are not related to the bootcamp. What is better, in my opinion, Django and Vue or Django and React? I think they're both probably equally as good. I like React better because I know React better. That's it. Yeah. Along these lines, Vue versus React versus Angular. Yeah, I think that React and Vue are my preference now. Angular is... It's a full-fledged front end, so you can't build as small of components out of the gates as you can with Vue and React. All right, could you cover Django built-in security and recommended additional security from third-party providers? Yes, I will actually make note of this for the bootcamp. I think this is a good one that I should probably include, so we can talk quite a bit about it. Thanks for that question. How do I ace a Django senior engineer interview? That's a good question. Maybe we need to actually interview some people that actually do these kinds of interviews. Like I should actually talk to those people to give you a really good, solid advice there. I think Danny Fieldroy, who wrote the book 2 Scoops of Django, I think he has really good advice on interviewing for Django positions because he's hired so many more Django developers than I have. So he would be a good one to check out. $200 is too expensive. Yeah, I totally understand that it's too expensive, but this is going to be a lot of time that I'm going to be working with these people. So I realize that it's outside the budget for a lot of people, but in all honesty, if you can't afford it, I totally understand, and that's why I'm doing the live bootcamp streaming for free, so all of you can actually benefit at least from the education side. I just can't actually do an entire weekend for free. It's just very much outside the realm of what's possible. Because I'm going to be putting a lot of time in these projects. I'm going to be reviewing their code, giving them direct feedback, and all that. So, I mean, that's just how it is, right? Maybe in the future we'll be able to get sponsorship for this. So like companies actually sponsoring the bootcamp itself, the entire thing, and then the selection of the weekend people would be based off of a variety of metrics instead of a dollar amount. Hopefully I'll be able to do that at some point. If you're interested in sponsoring, or if you know someone that is, let me know. Just shoot me an email or tweet at me. I will definitely take this into serious consideration. So there's my Twitter right there for that. So yeah. Can I send you a link to do best organization in our Django projects? There's a lot of different methodology for doing your Django project. I'll definitely be talking about that in the live stream as well. Honestly, the book 2 Scoops of Django pretty much any version of it is really, really good for things related to organization. The authors created Django Cookie Cutter, or Cookie Cutter Django, kind of going blank on the package itself. But they have a very popular Django package that they also write about best practices inside of Django as well. And I think they are like definitely really good. So I would check that out. Thanks for the question. Maester. That's funny. Yes, Game of Thrones. For sure. You learned a lot in 1 month watching my videos. Thank you. Winter is coming. Yeah, I think 2020 is like the, Game of Thrones winter, right? Just, coronavirus is the Night King or something. And we will defeat him. Or Arya will. Anyways, I don't know. Thanks for watching. Can I do something like 30 days of JavaScript? Yes, I will be doing 30 days of JavaScript at some point. Just not yet. I can only do so much in a day. I really wish that there was a way to build an AI that could speak for me, and I just say, hey, cover these concepts, and it does it. Maybe at some point it will, or it will actually take clips of me already talking about it, because there's definitely that as well. Like how cool would it be if you could highlight a piece of code and you can get an explanation for that piece of code, maybe a general explanation or a specific one if somebody actually talked about it. Me or anybody for that matter, that I think would be really, really cool, perhaps in the future. You know what I mean? When will you do more AI stuff on Tide AI? Yeah, it's the same thing. It's like I got to pick and choose what it is that I can work on at any given time. And right now it's about helping you guys master and learn Django so you can move to where you want to go. I definitely will cover many other things as well, including like the Raspberry Pi. I got a really cool module for that I want to cover outside of this as well. So there's definitely a lot more coming, as well as AI. I think there's a fundamental shift with AI that I am still doing my best to fully understand it, and all of that will be as a result. The teaching part will most likely be on Coding for Entrepreneurs, with some exceptions, but Tide AI is going to be a big part of that future. So thanks for the question. Let's see here. Thank you for the comment. That's really nice. Okay. DB is SQLite 3 by default. That's correct. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Can you follow the bootcamp using Ubuntu? Yes, absolutely. As long as you can get Python installed and you can do everything that I just did, you can totally follow the bootcamp using Ubuntu. You remember learning my Django 5 years ago. Now you're a Golang developer. Awesome. Cool. How do you like the Golang? That's a good, that's an interesting one. A lot of popularity around that. How about a tutorial on AWS Beanstalk with some CI/CD, so continuous integration and continuous deployment? Thanks for the suggestion. I appreciate it. Oh, this is like code specific, but I like it. So request.post and request.post.get. Request.post is a query dictionary. It can be converted into a Python dictionary. So request.post.get, in the way you wrote it, is actually how you get any key value pair in there. Yes. Next one. Can we use MongoDB with Django? Absolutely can. I just wrote a blog post on it, actually. It's called Django. It's DJONGO. That is the way you integrate Django with MongoDB. I probably need to make a video on it soon, too. Thanks for that. Thanks for watching. I'm not sure what you meant by this lyrics, but thank you for getting pumped. This is a good question. Is this Django MVC or Django REST? This is actually Django MVT. T is the template, so model view template, not model view controller. And it's not Django REST because we're not doing the Django REST framework. We're not building a REST API in this stream. The best Django book, I don't have a really good answer for that, but the one that I recommend the most is 2 Scoops of Django, any version of Django pretty much. Those are really good for a lot of really good practices, but I don't think they cover the basics. I think it's meant for somebody who's a little bit more experienced of a Django developer. So yeah, thanks for the question. Cool. It looks like we have quite a few of you have a good amount of experience doing this, and not very many of you have 0 to 3 months, which is great. And I guess I'm curious as to how many of you are actually going to be showing up for this, if it's the 1 to 5 years, if that's the majority of you on the stream. So I'll probably have to put this up again. Okay, so trying to get back to more live stream stuff. You must have just shown up. VS Code is what I'm going to be using. Thank you for that. Which one of your Django series would you suggest someone start with? So if you're doing the bootcamp, you could do the bootcamp. Any of my Try Django series are meant for beginners, right? And the bootcamp is going to be very similar to like what I did today. So even if you're just now showing up, if you rewatch some of the stream, you'll actually see generally what it is that we'll be doing. Yes. Will you cover Django-based class-based views with customization, like updating data into a model from an update view and stuff like that? Will I be covering the Django class-based views in the view portion? I might get there. I also might not. I'm not positive if I'm going to be covering class-based views just yet. It really actually depends on how the first day goes, on how far everyone feels like they've progressed in that single day, which is going to be next Monday. Best API, or what for API best framework is Fast AI, or Fast API, excuse me. But potentially, it really depends on what it is that you're trying to do specifically. So not necessarily always. You can't. It's really hard to make those blanket statements altogether. So disadvantages of Django, there are a number of them. One of them, it's not fully asynchronous capable yet, as in the Django ORM is not asynchronous. That's one of them. It also doesn't have a built-in REST API methodology for it. You have to use a third-party package called the Django REST Framework, which is really, really good. But I think those two, it'd be really nice if those did come out. The asynchronous ORM, they're definitely working on that. So eventually that's going to happen. I just don't know about the REST API built-in stuff, because you don't have to use the Django REST framework for it, but I think it clarifies things a lot better. So thanks for showing up. The bootcamp, the streaming portion of the bootcamp is 100% free. I'm going to stream all of that right here on YouTube, and then I'm going to have a 20-person limit for a weekend that you, me, and the rest of those people will be solving problems that you're having in your projects in general. Those will be $200 US for those 20 people, and it's going to be first come, first serve. So even if there's only 5 of you, that's it. It'll be the 6 of us then, and we'll solve those problems. If there's 2 of you, you're going to get a lot of attention. But I think 20 is a good number, because I'm going to have some of you guys pair off, and you'll be able to solve problems together. And then we'll also be working on solving problems together as well, which I'm going to give you direct feedback to your code and your project itself. So I'm going to actually review your code and give you, a bunch of like nudges in the right direction. I'm not going to be recoding everything for you though, but yeah, anyways, thanks for the question. I like this one. What is the voting system? I actually built this voting system specifically for these live streams. So I've been doing live Q&As for the past few weeks, and I really wanted to be able to poll everybody as well as having these comments. So I created it just there. Really simple. Perhaps there'll be a service at some point, but as of now, I just needed it for these live streams as a way to be a lot more interactive than me just looking at the live stream itself and trying to answer in any given time. Yeah. why would a Django test fail only when the full test suite is run? But in I don't know the actual problem that you're facing. Maybe if you tweet me your GitHub repo and have some sort of README in there that's saying what's going on, maybe I can try and give it a look. You know what I mean? Let's see, which database are we going to use? Most likely we're going to be using SQLite for the entire thing, but honestly, it's not that hard to integrate Postgres, MySQL, or MongoDB. Those things are all pretty easy to integrate now. So if we need to cover how to do those things as like an extra session, perhaps that's something we'll end up doing. It's really going to depend on how the first week goes in relation to the database itself. But Django handles all of the database transactions. So regardless of what the database is, Django will adapt to it and work really well for all of the databases. That's one of the huge advantages of using Django. Thanks for that question. I should be on Udemy. I am. I have a number of students on there. Just look for the teacher Justin Mitchell. That's my name. I'm definitely on there, and I have a number of courses on there. Are there any courses by you on a MOOC website? My website, so codingforentrepreneurs.com or cfe.sh, has, so just get rid of YouTube there. cfe.sh, that has everything that I've ever created as far as courses are concerned. So check that out. What happened to 30 days of Python? I actually just have 1 day left, and I am not sure what to do yet. That's why it's not done yet. I'm all ears for suggestions. Just tweet it to me of what your suggestion is. So yeah, there's 29 days already finished on 30 days of Python. Are these videos available offline is the question, hopefully. I mean, if you can watch YouTube offline, then yes, they will be available offline. So these are the live streams, and this video in particular are the exceptions to what's on my website. So cfe.sh or codingforentrepreneurs.com. That's only on YouTube. Yeah. So here's another one. Just wanted to drop by and say you started learning Django by following my videos in 2016. Nice, Ronald. Great to hear from you. Now you're freelancing since 2018 full-time. That is awesome to hear. Way to put in the work and make it happen. 2 scoops of Django 3.0. Yeah, so almost any version of 2 scoops of Django is good. Because Django has changed a little bit, but not too much. All right. How many live streams am I planning to make for this bootcamp? I think there will be a total of 10, and the actual content itself will probably be about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer than that. But then it'll be followed by Q&A, much like what I did today. When I actually started live streaming, the content itself, that's pretty much going to be the gist of it. Yeah. So thank you for that question. Will I collaborate with other YouTubers to make some project in the Django in the future? That's probably a good idea. Part of the reason I haven't collaborated with anyone really yet is the fact that it does take a lot of time to coordinate schedules on that collaboration, which means that I'm not actually working on producing content or doing research. So everything that I build, literally everything, ends up being really good material for courses. So all of the projects I've ever worked on end up turning into courses in one way or another. So one of the things that I will be doing at some point is an Electron course. So Electron using JavaScript and a Django backend or a Python backend. All of those things I learned and used for Tight AI. So working on that stuff actually allows me to build, I think, better content. But the collaborations would probably be great because then not only can I put in my own unique view on any given part, but also like actually overlapping, you know, with some of the content that a lot of us do. And there are some really, really great YouTubers out there that make amazing content. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that question. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Jose, which technologies and concepts would you recommend a backend developer to learn first? So if you're trying to go into DevOps, like building all of the infrastructure that runs an application like Django, that's probably outside the context of this, right? I don't think that's what you're asking. I think you're asking how to build like a web application backend. So to do that, you can probably start with Python and then move into Django or Flask or Fast API. Once you know Python, building a backend web application is not really that hard to do. It's just learning all of the little ins and outs of how to create a solid backend that also has the ability to save users, do the authentication thing, and also save all the data in there. So thanks for the question. Will I ever do a continuation of my Tweet Me project? I'm guessing you mean Tweet Me 2, the one that I released a few months back. Will I ever continue it? Maybe at some point, but you know, so many times when I get through a big project like that, it's just like I want to be done with it for a while. And when I mean a while, it might be a year or longer before I actually revisit one of those projects, because it just takes a lot of effort to actually put those things forward, and then I'm just ready to move on. So I might actually revisit the Tweet Me 2 project. I do have other concepts that relate to it that I can actually reference. It's just not the project itself. Thanks for the question, though. Appreciate it. Django class-based views versus function-based views. Which one is good? They're both great. They do the same thing. They render a view. Function-based views are a lot easier to get going if you've never actually built anything in Django before. Class-based views just shortcut how that's all done using CRUD. So create, retrieve, update, and destroy. Class-based views actually shortcut that quite a bit. So I think they're both really good. Thanks for the question. 30th day should be dedicated to where we go from here. Python project ideas, showcase of popular apps and websites using Python. That's a really good idea. But I actually want that, something like that, to be like towards the end of the 30th day, maybe the 31st day, if you will. But sort of a wrap-up lesson that isn't exactly a project. So I do want to actually create another project for the 30th day. So I do appreciate the suggestion, though. Can there be a short tutorial on Django and GraphQL? Yeah, so graphing is one of those projects that you can actually use to use the protocol of GraphQL. That's what I would recommend, but thank you for the suggestions. Can you set up a reminder email list to get a reminder of the live stream? Because the YouTube reminder does not work that well. That is a great idea. Let's see here. On Monday I'll have something like that. But just keep in mind that on Monday, that's when it'll start. So it's going to be Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. till about 11:30, somewhere in that range, depending on how many questions we get. And then Tuesday, it's going to be the same thing. Wednesday, the same thing, and so on. Just make sure you're checking each day for the on my channel or in your subscriptions for what's planned, because I will absolutely put a plan out. And I think part of the reason it was buried too is because I released literally all of my live streams, so you guys can rewatch those things there. I'm confident that I can get a good understanding and information about Django with your tutorial. I really do think so, and deploy a small speech recognizer, silly, using Keras. Cool. I do think you can do that, absolutely. I don't think that Django is always the best tool for serving something like a machine learning model. I would actually use a much smaller framework than Django. But if you actually want to store a bunch of data, and you want to use a lot of the features that Django has, then by all means you totally could. But I wouldn't use it as your primary application for your users in the long run, because once you hit scale, the serving the model through Django might cobble up the actual Django project itself too much. Oh, excuse me. Okay. Look at this. Brad, Dennis, and Corey, and Telusco. Yeah, I've seen his channel. It actually looks pretty cool. Ooh, I got something caught in my throat. Yeah, so those guys I probably should reach out and try and do some sort of collaboration with at some point, because all of them cover just amazing things and do a really, really good job. And it's definitely worth checking out too. That's why I put it on right now. This comment is even showing up, is because I totally think that what they do is really important for all of us. And if we want to progress the Django community in general, learning and supporting all of the Django developers, as well as the authors and teachers and all that, is a really, really good idea. Django is really close to being the most popular web framework in the world among anything on GitHub. Flask is not that far behind. Express.js is not that far behind, because those are also amazing. So I do also support those as well. It's not like I'm just pure Django, because Django is not the right solution for every tool. Thanks for those suggestions. Do I have any courses on moving a website from a Linux server to a Windows server? I do not. I do actually not even recommend doing that unless you have a really good reason. But as far as moving like a Django project, you'll probably just need to run Waitress instead of GUnicorn to run it on a Windows server. Where on Linux you'll probably use GUnicorn. Thanks for that. Okay, so I'm going to answer maybe a few more questions, hopefully related to the actual bootcamp itself. Here's a good one. What's going to be the time zone? It's going to be Pacific time zone, so the California time zone. I think it's what, GMT plus 8, something like that. So that's the time zone that it's going to be in, always. So you're on here right now. It's going to be what, 3 hours prior to this, pretty much. Answer the question. And the Django admin page, yeah. So, okay, well, let's see. If we have any more questions related to the bootcamp, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to call this. Hey, you built a handshake from your Tweet Me Too project. Cool. Awesome. I need to check that out again. Ooh, hey, what a suggestion. I had to show this one. That is pretty interesting. How to build a live voting system for your YouTube live chat. Just like this one. It's interesting, but unfortunately, maybe just the voting. Actually, no, not even that. You know why? Because the YouTube API requires a OAuth to actually authenticate, which means that you need a full-on Django project or some sort of web application in production to really do the authentication. And that would be a 3 to 6 hour deal. It would not be, an hour and a half, which is what I try to do with the 30 days of Python. But I really like that idea. Perhaps that'll be a future course as well. Thanks for the question. Okay, guys, so do we have any more questions related to the bootcamp? Is the bootcamp free? Yes, it is. Here, I'll just go ahead and rapid fire some of these questions. They will not be on the screen any longer, as well as those links. Let's get rid of that. I'm just going to rapid fire them. So please make a course on deep learning. Yes, thank you for the suggestion. I appreciate it. Victor, you are the inspiration. Thank you for saying that. Rails is becoming less popular. Will get its legacy back? I don't know, maybe. But the programming changes so often. It's like a good idea to just, make sure that you are resilient to this. Is this bootcamp free? Yes, it's going to be all live streamed for free. Just make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you have alerts enabled. That's pretty much it. Oh, wow. Sorry, guys. I missed some of these live, these super chats. Thank you for this stuff. Data Geek, Marius. Here, let me actually pull these things up. I really got to fix that little glitch here. Dave with the coffee again. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. You got me yesterday. And yesterday, funny thing enough, maybe you're doing this or maybe it's just to give me coffee. Yesterday was apparently National Coffee Day in the US. I had no idea, but you gave me coffee and that like really solidified it for me, which is hilarious. So thank you. Thank you so much. Django Asteen. Are you mixing Justin with Django? It seems like it. That's hilarious. I've never seen that. Justin doesn't actually end with an E. It's just IN. Justine, which is actually a girl's name, ends with an E. I see this a number of times from some of my international students. It's always gives me a chuckle when I see it because it's probably just one of those things you just don't know. Because, names are funny like that. Thanks for those super chat, guys. Sorry it took me so long to respond to them. I'm usually pretty good on responding those, but this little comment thing that I have going is actually a little bit more challenging when I get a lot of comments backed up. So I put those comments. Those are usually right at the top. I do appreciate it. So thank you guys. Yesterday was your birthday. Happy birthday, Reddy. I don't know how to pronounce your first name, but thank you for mentioning that. Holla holla. Are you a Ja Rule fan? You're welcome for making it free. I'm glad that. I mean, my goal is to really just help you guys out, right? So whatever that means. Now I have all sorts of responsibilities I need to take care of, so I can't do everything for free, as I would imagine most of you understand. But the other aspect of doing it for free is the fact that we've got so many people around the world that can really benefit from learning this stuff and should, and we need more Django developers. We need more Python developers. We just need more developers in general. So if I can help you get to the next level and then convince you that you should spend money and time investing in courses to just get you to the next level. I would love it if they were my courses, but there's a lot of really, really good courses out there that are going to help you a lot, because the thing about watching on YouTube is you might be able to string together things for sure, but when you actually put money down for a course, then it's like in the back of your head, oh my gosh, I need to actually get value out of that. I need to actually do something with it. I do this with buying physical books, right? So I love this book. Andrew Chask is my hero or one of my heroes of AI. And I buy those books, the physical books, as a reminder to be like, I need to read that, right? It's right next to my desk. I need to read it. So that investment is constantly nagging at me, right? When you watch something for free, you might absolutely get the information that you want, but it's not nagging at you like it would if you actually purchased courses and stuff like that. And of course, I would love it if you actually, grabbed my courses, but any course will do that for you. And I recommend that you get in that habit if you can afford it. And all of my free stuff is meant to help you maybe even land a job as a freelancer where you're starting to make some income and you actually will want to actually invest and all that. Here's a really good question that I missed from Gambo Master that I actually think is a really good idea. Is can I arrange a test or something where the winner gets a $200 off? So actually, maybe there's some sort of competition we can do with everyone on the live stream that if the winner does the best, then they actually get $200 off the private bootcamp, or basically going to the bootcamp for free. So that is a potential. This is a really good idea, and it kind of goes along with the lines of things that are free or not. So yeah. So when you do invest any amount of money, the goal is to actually get something out of it. So I realize that, I mean, a big part of the reason I do YouTube in general and so much on YouTube is because not everyone can afford that. But once you actually get some skills that you can use in freelancing, then you'll start to earn money and you'll actually be able to start to afford those investments. So yeah, that's a little rant on that, but I definitely think that you guys should check out this bootcamp. That's kind of the point, right? Cool. Wow. How do you ban someone from the channel that just is spamming? David Rosen, what is this bad idea? Are you saying the winner of something? I think maybe that's what you mean. Or you called it a stupid idea. Anyways. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick. I think David's making a good point that people will feel like crap for paying for it if one person wins instead of somebody else. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting idea, but I think at the end of the day, at least for this very first one, you know, really thinking about it, it's going to make a lot more sense that, hey, if you're going to invest in this, invest in it, and that's that. Right? I don't want to have some gimmicks and all those sorts of things. Maybe for like free memberships or something like that every once in a while. But even that, I'm hesitant to do it because the dollar amount is an investment for what you're doing, but it also puts me on the hook to make sure that I'm giving you as much value as you possibly can. In my opinion, spending a weekend in this, yes, it's going to be $200, but it's should be worth around $2,000 for you. Because if you try to hire someone with my skill set to give you direct code advice, it's going to cost you a lot more than that. Like if you tried to hire a freelancer to do that. So to me, you're getting a huge bargain on this. I know a lot of you don't necessarily feel that way, but I totally get it. And I totally get where you're coming from. But honestly, go on freelancer.com right now and try and get someone to hire someone to actually give you direct feedback on your code that generally knows for the problem areas that beginners have, like I do. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be really expensive. So anyways, thank you for bearing with me on that little side rant about cost of things. So last few questions related to the bootcamp. Please let me know what you need. Time and effort is the only thing you need to invest. Yeah. Oh, so this goes back to the dollar amount thing or anything. You can learn anything given the amount of time and effort you put into it. Absolutely. But one of the things you can't learn is experience just from reading books. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you glean a lot of experience from these books if you actually do read all of it. Sometimes you glean a lot of this experience from courses as well. But the thing is, whenever you're learning something, if you put the time and effort in, you will absolutely be able to learn it. But the real key thing to get good at it is to get a lot of experience. And hopefully my experience in general actually shortcuts a lot of the challenges you might have so you can actually gain a lot of experience faster than you would otherwise. But I do totally agree with you. Time and effort is really all you need to invest in yourself. But adding in some dollars to actually buy courses will get you to the next level as well. Rant over, I promise. Okay, so Discord server, that will come later once we actually lock down the actual details for the private one-to-one chat and all that. So thank you for that. Your course may be expensive, but most people like me who learn things from you and get a job, no one will ever forget how you help them and pay you back one day. Yeah, totally understand that. Thank you. Thank you for coming in and saying that. I mean, that's why I have a bunch of stuff on YouTube. It's to literally help everybody as much as possible. So yeah. Late arrival, how to join the bootcamp. It's going to be live streamed on YouTube. How do you register for the 20 people private session? Basically, I need to come up with a name for that. That will come later in the live stream. Yeah, Dave Rosen removed it. Okay. Yes. Can you buy a specific course instead of a complete membership on my website? Good question. Not yet. Thank you for that. So the bootcamp, just to reiterate, the bootcamp, all of the course part of things is going to be free. It's going to be live streamed. And at the end of it, I'm going to be answering a bunch of questions very similar to this. But if I don't have any other questions related to the bootcamp, I'm going to go ahead and hop off of this live stream. So thank you guys so much for coming out, asking questions, and watching the first portion of this. Once I actually put it live on YouTube, I'm probably just going to jump right into the setting up process there. As in, I'm probably going to cut out the Q&A part once it's on, once it's live. Call it Hacktoberfest. That's